All right. Well, welcome to our Courageous Community Conversations for Race and Social Justice. My name is Randy Heath. As you can see here, I work for Richland Library. I'm actually the manager of one of our newest locations, which is Richland Library, Edgewood. Um, and I have a kind of unique background. I do not have a master's in library science. All of my library training kind of took place in the house, but I started off with the library as a career coach, and then I kind of worked my way up from there. But also one of my passion works with the library is I'm one of the leaders of our work when it comes to social justice and race. And so what we're going to do is talk a little bit about that. I'm hoping that this will be an open conversation. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the work that we've done, some of the things that we're going to do, and I'm hoping to hear a little bit from you to find out what you've done, some of the things that you're hoping to do, and maybe we can talk about ways to collaborate or encourage one another. Sounds cool? All right, all right. We really had to ask ourselves as a Richland Library system, how should we respond? It was a lot of stuff that's been going on. I mean, if you watch the news, you know it's a lot of stuff going on. If you're in your community, you know there's a lot of stuff going on as it relates to race and social issues. And so we really had to kind of do a heart check and figure out as a library system, how should we respond? For those of you who are not familiar with this photo, this is a photo of Walter Scott, an unarmed black man who was shot and killed in North Charleston, South Carolina. Our library is in Columbia, South Carolina, which is the capital, which is very close to North Charleston. And so although this shooting did not take place in Columbia, we felt the impact. And then this happened. For those of you who are unfamiliar with this is the Emmanuel 9 when 9 parishioners were shot and killed by a white nationalist who wanted to start a race war. And so although he was unsuccessful at starting a race war in our state and country, he did start a ripple effect. It led to some conversations that we had to have as a community as well, which led to we had the Confederate flag that was on our state grounds. He used that as a symbol of hate, and legislators had conversations, of course, for many years leading up to this, but it was finally voted, and it was taken down by our then governor, Nikki Haley, which, you know, that kind of created some joy to some degree. As a community, we saw a lot of folks feeling together. Like, how can we continue to improve things? How can we fight against racism? How can we fight it for social justice? How can we do this together? And the library needed to be a part of that. We had to be a part of that. But the shootings, the injustices, continued to happen. We saw black and people of color continue to be targeted or mistreated by the justice system or police. We saw the rise of the Black Lives Movement. They came to Columbia. There were protests in the streets. On some sides, we had those who were saying that the Confederate flag, for them, it was a symbol of pride. It was not a symbol of hate. And they felt like it needed to be on the state ground as part of their heritage. We had some that was like, no. Just flat out no, and it was fighting for. And so we saw protests in the street, and someone in the library said, "What are we going to do? Should we say anything? Should we respond? What should be our response?" And it was tension was thick. It was thick in the community. It was thick in the library. It was thick. It was thick on social media, where you see here. I have a quote here from our former Columbia Fire Department, who put on social media when we saw those protesting in the street, who said, "Idiots shutting down I-26 better not be there when I get off work, or there's going to be some run over dumbasses." Excuse my language. That's what he said on social media. One of the leaders of the community. So tension was thick, y'all, and we really kept asking ourselves what to do. And one of my heroes, of course, is Martin Luther King Jr., which I'm sure some of you are as well. But if I can just read a quote here. Are we more concerned with the size, power, and wealth of our society, or with creating a more just society? The failure to pursue justice is not only a moral default, Without it, social tensions will grow and turbulence in the streets will persist despite disapproval and repressive action. We oftentimes say that the library is neutral. What does that mean? Does that mean that we shouldn't have an opinion? Because we're all people and we all have opinions, right? And we heard the great Stacey Abrams say the other day that library should invite opinion. And that's sort of what we wanted to do we wanted to create a neutral space. And so we included this tweet that we saw that Storytime Underground put, that librarians are not neutral and libraries are not neutral spaces. What we wanted to do was create a safe space where all opinions could be heard and discussed. And we decided as a library system that we was going to fight against any form of racism, any form of hatred. And so we had a response. And so what we did in 2016, we created our social awareness task force. And with the social awareness task force, we chose 13 diverse staff members. By diverse, I mean age, race, gender, and those who were passionate about the work of social justice. And all of the members were trained. All of them were trained, facilitator trained, to lead discussions on race, biases, inclusivity, equality. That was our mission. We had to have a team focused on leading this work. And we tackled issues like social justice, women's rights, race, and we created a purpose statement. Our purpose was we actively build community by encouraging honest dialogue, empathy, and courageous communication. You're going to hear me say that a lot because it's not easy to talk about this stuff that I'm telling us we need to talk about. It's hard. It takes courage. It takes a safe space where you don't feel like you're going to be judged forever for asking a question or sharing your opinion or inquiring the opinion of others. And so we created these circles of dialogue. And these circles of dialogue, we invited the public to participate in forums. We've had discussions as small as 20, as large as 70, 80. Just public that was invited. And we would break the larger groups in smaller circles. And we would go through scenarios like, is it okay to touch a black person's hair? Can I touch your hair? Y'all ever heard that one? It's like, can I touch your hair? But we also had other things like a black person goes to a white friend's house, predominantly white neighborhood, and while he's waiting at the doorsteps, a neighbor passes his vehicle and takes a picture of his license plates. That was something that happened in Columbia. That was something that happened to me. Ironically, as I was going to visit a partner on this work, and that hit home. Those are stories that that doesn't make the national news, but those are things that happen in the community. And so we wanted to create a space where other people could share their stories, share their perspectives, things that you may not hear in the news, things that you may not see on social media, but that are their experiences, so that we can learn together. And as you can imagine, conversations could potentially get heated if not dealt with in the right way. That's why everybody had to be trained. We also utilize guidelines, which we would call discussion guidelines, which was courtesy of one of our partners, Race to the Table SC in South Carolina. And so with our guidelines, we had to encourage people to try on ideas, be as open-minded as possible. Don't go in thinking like, oh, he looks that way, certainly he feels that way. We had to be open to ideas. We had to listen. And those are the discussion guidelines that we ask everyone to agree to. Everyone, in order to participate, we ask you, are you willing to agree to all of these discussion guidelines? And we welcome the idea that it's okay to disagree. It's about seeking to understand. We have different backgrounds. We have different opinions. It's okay to disagree. We're encouraged. If you disagree, you disagree. Respond with, tell me more. We encourage open-ended conversation. So, you feel that way. Tell me a little bit about why you feel that way. We, dig deeper. Try to find out. Try to be curious. And confidentiality. We wanted to make sure everything was confidential. So we didn't want conversations to happen. And then you leave and you're like, oh my God, you won't believe what Randy had to say. No, we don't want that. We wanted to, and so everyone had to agree to that as well. And so you could come from there and say, hey, one of the things that we learned was this, but we didn't want you to say, hey, Bob felt this way, or Bob said this. That doesn't create a safe space that we need. And we encourage everyone to use I statements. I believe, I feel, as opposed to you said this, or you did this, or your people did this. That's like, oh my God, instantly you're on defense, right? So that's not creating a safe space that we want. And so when you're dealing with such heavy topics, we had to make sure that everyone was in agreement. So we had something that was guiding our conversation. And one of the I guess more popular programs that came from our social awareness task force was our Let's Talk Race series. And with our Let's Talk Race series, that's when is the name fits. We talked about race. And so with the Let's Talk Race, we would have these conversations open for the public. We would do it quarterly for a while, and we would partner with folks as well. Another thing with the Let's Talk Race, we saw some interesting stories. I recall one guy who was a admitted reform white nationalist who said he was a racist for like 3/4 of his life. And we had in the same discussion circle, there was a black feminist. It was some good conversation, y'all. It was some good conversation, good, honest conversation. Not heated back and forth, but passion. And that's what we saw a lot of. We saw ages from teenagers, where we, of course, made sure that the parents were okay with them being involved with that, to people who were senior citizens, 80, 90 years old. So we saw these cross-generational conversations. We would always diversify the circles. So so we encourage as many people of all ages, all races to participate, and then we would break them up into smaller circles that would diversify a little bit more. We will also do activities like this, Check Your Bubble, which is courtesy of one of our partners, Race to the Table SC. And with this Check Your Bubble, we believe that one of the things that has to happen, you have to try to be intentional when you're dealing with race and social issues. It doesn't just happen. Doesn't just happen. And so with this bubble, it asks you to kind of identify, look at your life. And so if I was to look at myself, for instance, I am black. My significant other is black. My neighborhood is multiracial. And I would ask myself these questions, and then at the end, I would kind of look at it. I'll look at it. Like, am I happy with the way this looks? If I'm happy, then yes, that's good. We weren't in the space to say, you need to change that. That's not our role here. We wanted to use an assessment that will allow us to kind of look at and see, and if we see something that we don't like, then we can work on changing it together. And so in these small circles, after you complete the Check Your Bubble, everyone would kind of in their circle would have a discussion about it. Whether it's things that you like about it, things that why your circle looks the way it does. Someone like me, for instance, I was very intentional about trying to diversify what my bubble looks like. And so this is an activity that we like to use. It's safe, it's easy, and it's pretty straightforward. And some of the successes that we saw with the Social Awareness Task Force, since its creation in 2016, we saw nearly 1,000 participants who have attended our discussions on race, women's rights, social justice. We hosted over 30 community forums, events, and book clubs system-wide. Some of you may be familiar with the movie Just Mercy that just came out. The author, Brian Stevenson, he actually came a couple years, he came to South Carolina, Columbia, South Carolina, to do a talk, one of the best talks I ever heard in my life, y'all. But leading up to his arrival, we hosted a book club and conversations. So we gave out so many, I forgot how many books we gave out, the Just Mercy book. And so we were collaborating with some of the efforts that was also happening. And And we also have been recognized nationally and locally for our work. We heard Stacey Abrams mention again the other day that it's not about fixing things, it's about making things better. And that's kind of what we look at. Are we really making an impact? And so when we look at the community impact, it's not about statistics. I told you that we had big sessions as large as 70 and 80 folks, but it's not about the numbers. It's about the quality of what's happening. Our lives being impacted, our lives being changed, our people being challenged to look at things a little bit differently. Are people learning how to have dialogue with people who may not look like them, think like them? Is that happening? And so what you see here is some of the participants said things like, we left feeling more hopeful about our community and more open to our neighbors. In my book, that's a win. We saw participants who reported to getting more proximate, which is something that Brian Stevenson speaks towards. He said, get more proximate. And we saw people who began to do that, people who of different races doing things like joining NAACP or seeking to have more diversity in their lives and relationship. We even had a lunch group that came from these discussions where one of our staff members, they participated. They weren't the ones facilitating it. A group of folks who were participating in these conversations, they said, we want to keep this going independently. And so they would meet up monthly for lunch and have intentional conversations on race. That's a win in my book, you know, and we've also partnered with others to really have them look at some of their work and policies, and we looked at our policies and things as well. And the number one question we got over and over again, when are we doing this again? When are we doing this again? Win. More. And so some of the things that we have coming up now, we do have our family and adult race and diversity book club sets. That's great. We got a bunch of people signed up and ready to participate with that. We have our social justice documentary film series where we've shown many films and with discussions to go along with that, and continue staff discussions. So one of the things that we began to do last year, we began to have monthly discussions with our staff that any staff member could participate. And we also, last year, every year we close 2 days a year. One of those days is where all of our staff members from Richland Library get together. And last year we did what was called Race Matters, where all 400 something of our staff got together and we did facilitated conversations on race. Yes, that's an undertaking, y'all. And it was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. The staff was like, when can we do this again? How often can we do this? Let's talk about some more topics regarding race. How can I become more involved with this work? And it was overwhelmingly positive feedback. And so that's when I said we started to do it monthly. After that feedback, that's when we started to do it monthly. One of our most positive initiatives was the Let's Talk Race. So from our social awareness task force, we've actually just started a new team called the Let's Talk Race team. So where the social awareness task force team dealt with women issues, LGBTQIA issues, all areas of social justice, we decided that we wanted another platform just to deal with race. So now we have a Let's Talk Race team. And that Let's Talk Race team, we have a curriculum. It's required reading to be a part of that team. It's required film and documentary viewings. There's a certain level of commitment that you have to agree to. And that team will also lead community conversations for the public once a month, community conversations for the staff once a month on race, and a Let's Talk Race book club, which will be monthly as well, along with figuring out other ways to be involved with the community and collaborate with other initiatives that's going on around this issue of race. And so we have a really busy 2020 schedule. We got a lot of work to do. And so, but that new Let's Talk Race team, it consists of 15 members, and their supervisors and managers have all agreed to allow them to be a part of this. We also have members of our executive leadership team and management team who are active members on the team. So they're not just leading the team, they are in agreement with helping to facilitate and all that as well. So it's a buy-in from the top to the bottom. It's a work that requires collaboration from every staff member at Richland Library. And then we have another initiative called My Life Experience, which is a mobile empathy lab where we utilize virtual reality technology to simulate different experiences. And the whole point is to create empathy. Since 2019, we've had over 300 participants, community participants. We've dealt with issues like immigration, homelessness, social justice, sexual assault, and disability. We even have different experiences like living while black. I say I don't need that one. I got that one mastered. I didn't do that one yet. But it's the whole point is to create empathy, and we've had over 88% of folks respond that they had a better understanding of the topic that we were experiencing through that simulation. I didn't include this. We didn't include this in the PowerPoint, but we had over 90 participants who said that they felt more empathetic after that mobile empathy lab experience. And we got this through a grant. The technology, and so we have a team, a mobile empathy lab team that's in charge with facilitating this work throughout the community and the system. We're also launching this year monthly experiences for the community with this mobile empathy lab as well, as along with partnering. This is a quote from one of our participants of the mobile empathy lab, which kind of sums up what we're hoping to accomplish with the social awareness task force, with the Let's Talk Race, with the mobile empathy lab. To understand and feel what others are going through is a gift. Some people ignore it. Some people pay attention. I choose to pay attention. I just hope people walk away with an open outlook on what they might not be noticing every day. And this is from one of our mobile empathy lab experience participants. This is what we're hoping. This is one stat, but look at this. That's a win in our book. We're hoping to create more and more of this, and by involving having buy-in across the system. This is a work that requires collaboration, many gifts, many talents, creative folks. We're incorporating project management. We're utilizing every skill set possible that's on our team to facilitate this work.